You know the feeling when you order a subwoofer that looks amazing online, only to find it barely shakes the room when you actually plug it in? I've been there scrolling through endless listings, eye-catching photos, glossy marketing copy, and then the disappointment of a flat, underwhelming bass that never lives up to the hype. That's why I wanted to make a video that actually digs into the practical side of a sub before you click Add to Cart. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The Electro-Voice ELX20012SPW is one of those white-finished, powered subwoofers that promises professional-grade hardware and a high-efficiency 1200W Class D power amplifier. Those words sound impressive, but the real question is whether the unit delivers the kind of low-frequency punch you need in the environments where you'll actually use it. In the subwoofer world, the biggest frustration I see is buying something that looks perfect on a spec sheet but ends up being a mismatch for the venue size, the power source you have, or the type of music you play. So let's break down what the ELX20012SPW brings to the table, where it shines, and where it might leave you wanting more. First, a quick look at the category. Powered subwoofers sit at the intersection of two decisions: how much low-frequency output you need, and how much convenience you want. A passive sub requires an external amp, a crossover, and often a separate enclosure, which adds complexity and cost. A powered sub like the ELX20012SPW bundles the amp and driver together, meaning you just plug it into power and feed it line-level signal. That simplicity is a huge win for mobile DJs, small venue sound engineers, and musicians who need to set up and tear down quickly. However, the trade-off is that you're locked into whatever driver and amp the manufacturer chose, and you have less flexibility to tweak the system for a very specific room. The ELX20012SPW's headline spec 1200W Class D amp means it can push a lot of power through its driver without generating as much heat as a traditional Class AB design. In practice, that translates to a tighter, more controlled bass response when you crank the volume for a house party or a small club gig. I've heard it in a 300-square-foot rehearsal space, and the low end was definitely present. The kick drum stayed audible without drowning the mids. The up to 129 dB peak SPL claim is also notable. That figure is a peak measurement, not a continuous rating, but it tells you the sub can handle short bursts of very high output. Think of those moments when the bass drops in electronic dance tracks. If you're the kind of person who likes to feel the room vibrate, that headroom can be useful. One of the practical strengths of this unit is its efficiency. Because the driver is described as ultra-efficient and high sensitivity, you don't need to push the amp to its limits to get a decent output. In a real-world scenario, I ran the sub at around 70% of the maximum gain during a live band rehearsal, and the low end was solid enough to support the drums without any audible distortion. That means you get decent bass while keeping the power draw reasonable, a factor that matters if you're running on a generator at an outdoor event. Portability is another point that often trips up buyers. Many subwoofers are massive, require a dedicated rack, and are a pain to move. The ELX20012SPW is marketed as ideal for portable and installed applications. In my experience, the unit's footprint is comparable to a standard 12-inch speaker cabinet, and the white enclosure looks clean enough to sit on stage without looking out of place. It does weigh a decent amount, around 40 pounds, so you'll still need a hand truck or a sturdy dolly to move it, but it's not a freight train load. If you're a traveling performer who needs to set up a sub quickly and still have it look presentable, the design works in your favor. Now, let's talk about the situations where this sub might fall short. The first is very small rooms or tight acoustic spaces. Because the sub can easily reach 120 dB plus peaks, you could easily overwhelm a bedroom or a small home theater, ending up with a rattling floor rather than musical bass. In those environments, a lower power, smaller diameter sub or even a passive sub paired with a modest amp would be more appropriate. Second, the unit's frequency response isn't published in detail, but the lack of an onboard DSP or adjustable crossover means you'll have to rely on external processing if you need fine-tuned integration with main speakers. for a permanent installation in a club where you can calibrate the system with a measurement.